Can you compare the issues here in Uzbekistan and in other countries?
The global warming for them is basically sea level rise.
How UNDP is helping Uzbekistan deal with the water shortage problem?
We look at the development as a sort of like a long-term development.
What are the specific goals of UNDP here in Uzbekistan?
Greening, the sustainability and ecology.
Opportunities at UNDP for youth engagement.
We have internship program every year during the summer.
How UNDP works. Thank you for joining us today. And I would like to start by asking about your impressions of Uzbekistan so far. How long have you been here?
A little bit over 4 months in Tashkent, and I have also been able to travel to the regions, some of the regions of Uzbekistan. And my first impression is really great. It's an open society. It's a very young population. About 60% of the population here are young population, and very lively, energetic and dynamic, and very warm, welcoming people. So I'm really enjoying staying here.
Nice. Do you think that like over 60% of the population is young people? Do you think it's one of the good things about our country?
Yes, and also generally this part of the world have a younger generation, which means, of course, there are more innovative ideas, but also productive labor force, as well as ideas are coming into the society. And all these changes happening in the society requires innovation and energy and dynamic ideas. So I think having a young population in this region and in this country is really a positive thing.
I see. When I was doing my research for the interview, I came across one fact about you. So you worked in the UN system for over 25 years, right? So you had different posts in different states, including island states, right? Can you compare the issues here in Uzbekistan and in other countries? Like what are the differences and similarities that UNDP deals with?
I think some of the issues are the global issues which are affecting the different parts of the world in different ways, and the different people are being affected in the different ways. So, for example, like a global issue such as climate change, right? The global warming, which is happening at the global level, but affects the impact that brings to the different regions, the different countries, and different people in the same country are different. So, if I can use that example of global warming, I have spent quite long years in different parts of small islands. I stayed 5 years, almost 5 years in the Pacific Islands. I stayed about 4 years in Jamaica, and I stayed 2.5 years in Maldives at the Indian Ocean. So I spent quite long part of my life staying in small island developing states. And the global warming for them is basically sea level rise and losing their land and their habitation and the impact on people's life is really existential. And here, the same global warming is of course affecting the Central Asia, heat waves, drought, dry land, so affecting different parts of the population different ways. But the water scarcity issue is really like a top priority in the region because of the more frequent heat waves and because of the Central Asia glacier issues, melting glacier issues in the Hindu Kush, affecting people's lives on water and the land degradation. And the sandstorms affecting the health issues. So it's very different types of the impacts, but we are dealing with the same global warming, which is a global issue.
Yeah, I see. So what you're saying is problems are almost the same, but the implications of those problems are different, right?
Exactly.
Okay, great. And can you tell me how UNDP is helping Uzbekistan deal with the water shortage problem?
So UNDP is a very unique organization, I would say. We are a global organization, so we have 170 countries, conducting the programs, and the Uzbekistan office is one of them. And the unique modality that we have in UNDP is basically we look at the global and the local development issues in a holistic manner. For example, in Uzbekistan, so we are addressing the policy issues because for the sustainable impacts, we need to really address the policies. But at the same time, for the policies to be effective, we need to be also implementing and working with the local level, the governance issues, how communities are being impacted by these policies, which are being addressed at the central level. So, we have a structure in such a way that a global UNDP organization connected with the capital center here. So we have an office in Tashkent, but we also have the offices in different parts of the regions. And we have programs in almost all 14 regions, 12 regions and the 2 cities. So it's important uniqueness that we can address at the policy level, but also at the community levels. And then we interact very closely with the partner entities at the center, but also the localities.
I see. And how exactly does that happen? I mean, just in a few sentences, can you describe how UNDP works, like from identifying an issue to funding it and then launching a project maybe?
Okay, so we look at the development as a sort of like a long-term development. So we avoid, of course, ad hocness of our program. We want to be as strategic as possible to help the government to develop their policies. So how we do is we have the mechanism of 5-year development plan. The current program is ending in 2025. So we are at the moment developing the next phase of 5-year CPD, which is starting in 2026 until 2030. So in this process, we have very extensive discussions, not only with the government, but also the local governments, but also civil societies, people with special interests like Association of People with Disabilities, and international partners as well. So we will hear from them, we will interact with them, we will identify the areas that UNDP is good at, and then we will make the agreement under the CPD for 5-year plan. And that's the starting point. And then we will have the counterparts for developing the specific projects under that framework. So I would say it's a kind of like a long-term plan that we have, and we have the very strategic agreement with the government, and that's how our project starts.
And can you tell me what are the specific goals of UNDP here in Uzbekistan? You said you work with the government in partnership, right? And so what are the things that you support the government with?
So yesterday, for example, we heard from the president, some of the focus areas are very, very relevant to UNDP's areas. And I would say number one is greening, the sustainability and ecology, how to make the development more green and sustainable. That is one big agenda that UNDP is good at. The second part is definitely, together with the sustainability, we also want to contribute to the equality. There are many levels of inequalities in the society, in the population. The growth is happening very rapidly here, but the gap between the rich and the poor have a lot of impacts on people's lives in education, access to water, access to heating, access to job opportunities. So inequality is something that we really need to tackle. And I think the government reform agenda is really putting the focus on that area. So we are very happy to help in those areas.
So where does the funding of UNDP come from?
So as you know, UNDP is not a funder. We are a partner to the country, so our funding sources are coming from everywhere. In the headquarters, we have voluntary contributions from the different donors, and we receive the funding from our headquarters located in New York. But we can also source the funding locally and regionally, and that includes, for example, several funds related to the climate financing, like a Green Climate Fund or global environmental facilities, which have certain purposes and goals for the adaptation of climate impacts and the mitigation of global warming. So we source various sources of the financing and the funding. And recently we are also trying a lot of effort to diversify our financing resources, including the private sectors, including government. So we source a different financing and then program in the country.
I also know that you have an education in gender studies, right? So talking about gender equality, or in this case inequality in Uzbekistan, what do you think is the current stage of gender inequality in Uzbekistan?
There have been some progresses. For example, during the last election, we are seeing the largest number of women representatives in Uzbekistan's history in the political arena, which is really welcome a trend. But yet we are still seeing quite unacceptable number of gender-based violence happening. And I think people's behaviors and the culture and the norm have to be sort of changed in order to really have the gender equality in all spheres of society, economy, and the culture, and the politics. Every fabric of the society needs to try to achieve the gender equality, not only in number, but in the quality of the real sense of women's empowerment.
You know that gender equality is a very broad thing, right? And I think one of the biggest problems here in Uzbekistan is gender-based violence, right? Can you tell me, are there any projects of UNDP that are specifically tackling those issues?
So last year there was a very groundbreaking adoption of the law on criminalization of the gender-based violence. So UNDP, together with other UN agencies and international organizations, have supported such law to be adopted according to the international standards. That is really an important element, because without the policy, without the law, it's very difficult to implement the gender equality and preventing the violence against women. And then we need to support every stage of the implementation of the law. For example, awareness raising. And soon we are going to have the 16 days of activism starting in November 25. Some of the problems that we have is very much rooted in our belief that somehow it's okay to have a violence against women, and that has to change. And the best way to approach it is awareness raising, and people really need to understand it is preventable. So that's just one example of we are working about the issue. We have the legal implementation in the constitution. The government is guaranteeing people have access to free legal aid. But when it comes to the implementation, there is a capacity issue, there is a knowledge issue, and particularly in rural areas, there is limited access to the free legal aid. So when women have issues with human security, there is nowhere to go. Yeah. And the UN is helping together with the Ministry of Justice and the localities and NGOs and the universities to provide a legal clinic and the free legal aid. And that is a really interesting instrument that we can operate at the different regions and different parts of Uzbekistan.
I see. You mentioned the 16 days activism against violence. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So it starts on the International Day of Eliminating Violence Against Women on 25th of November, and it finishes on the Human Rights Day, December 10th. So basically recognizing the fact that women's rights are human rights, and that is the important point, number one. The second thing is, I think, to recognize the fact that the violence against women is preventable. It is preventable. It shouldn't be the norm, right? Why are we not preventing? Because we are not aware that this is a human rights issue. And it is so important that we recognize the fact that we have various levels of discrimination and stereotypes against women, and that is causing the violence within the families, within the communities, which is preventable. So let's start with awareness building and the capacity building to know that it is preventable.
Yeah.
That is the first step.
And how can I take part if I wanted to?
You as a journalist has a huge role to play, because this is awareness building, right?
Yeah.
So how do people normally get information about a society, about the values, about what is happening in the world?
Yeah.
Through media.
Through media.
Mass media.
Yeah.
I mean, in Uzbekistan, still I think a majority of people are getting information from television, but then it's shifting, the number is increasing. More and more people are getting information from online news sources such as yourself.
Social media, right?
Social media, yeah. So it is so important that journalists like yourself will provide more information about the facts, right? And also the resources. Resources including for those women, who have issues in the family, in the communities, getting victimized, can go to. So where are the resources? So it's important that journalists will pick up these issues and provide the necessary information and spread the values of the communities, which are so important to prevent the violence against women. So we are talking about prevention.
Yeah.
As a first step.
Yeah. So are there any events planned for these 16 days? Like, can anyone take part in those events?
In UNDP Uzbekistan, we are doing the competition of awareness building, the competition inviting all sorts of artists to come forward with the creative ideas of making posters and the visual content to basically educate the wider population and awareness building about the prevention of violence against women.
Now I'd like to touch a little bit upon the youth engagement here. Do you see a lot of engagement from the youth interested in the work of UNDP or the important values and the work that you guys do?
As I said at the beginning, I mean, youth here are very, very dynamic and energetic and wanting to be part of the social change. And I think that's the modality that UNDP wants to work with. They are part of our beneficiaries of trainings, awareness buildings. But once we train them and be part of the awareness building, they become the change makers. And we want them to plan their own ways of training others and change the society, change the world. So that's the way we work with the younger people. So they are beneficiaries, but they are also change makers.
Are there any opportunities at UNDP for youth engagement, and what are they?
At different levels. We have internship program every year during the summer. I think this year we had a dozen of younger people participated in the internship program. That's really like a direct way of working within UNDP organization here. But we also have a program level of youth engagement. We have youth entrepreneurship startup programs. Last week we had a very good, Central Asia startup conferences, and we are training younger people to be the business people, providing more jobs and opportunities for other younger people, fintech areas, digital economy areas. We are having really good results coming out of it. We also, work very closely with young associations in rural areas because for us it is important to reach out to the youth in variety of circumstances, not only in urban areas. So again, the business opportunities, job opportunities, and the skill set training to match with the more sort of dynamic economy now happening, not only in Uzbekistan, but to have access to the digital economy globally. is available for rural youth as well. So we have very good program training them and connecting with the market access and the technologies.